Factoring trinomials. The FOIL method is the opposite of factoring. You can use the FOIL method to check your answers of the factored trinomial. So when we factor trinomials, we're going to use the AC method. So when you have ax squared plus bx plus c, you're going to multiply your a and your c. Then you're going to find the factors of ac, or the number that you got when you multiplied a times c, that add to b, or your middle term. After you find the factors that when multiplied get you the a times c, and when you add them you get your b, you're going to rewrite the trinomial into 4 terms. So the middle term is composed of the 2 factors. So now we have a trinomial that actually is written in 4 terms. With 4 terms, we will factor by grouping. After you factor by grouping, you will get your answer, and then you can check your answer by doing the FOIL method to make sure you're correct. So here's some examples. There's a shortcut to the trinomials with a coefficient of leading 1, coefficient of 1. But I'm going to go ahead and use the AC method on this one so that we can see that we can get straight to our answer. So 1 times 8 is 8. We need factors of positive 8 that add to negative 6. Well, if we go negative 2 and negative 4, when we multiply those two, we get 8, and when we add them together, we get negative 6. So instead of writing negative 6 down, we are going to write it in terms of negative 2 minus negative 4. So when we add these together, we should get our middle term. So we're pretty much breaking this middle term up into 2 terms that should work. Group the first 2 and the last 2. Remember, the sign of the third term you have to keep. Factor by grouping. Okay, so right here we are going to take the GCF, and this is what we got here, and then we're going to take the GCF of negative 4, and this is our result. Since we have x minus 2 and x minus 2, those are same factors, we're going to factor that out, and we're left with x minus 4. Now, as you can see, the values we started with, we could have just written them in this form. So for instance, if we have x squared minus 7x plus 12, as long as the leading term or leading coefficient is 1, we can go ahead and split our x's up and then say, okay, what factors of 12 will add to negative 7? Well, that's going to give us negative 3 and negative 4. So we didn't really have to do all of these steps for this one. I'll show you the AC method for something other than 1 as the leading coefficient. So what we're going to do is take 3 times negative 4, that's negative 12. We need to find values or factors of negative 12 that add to negative 4. So if we go negative 6 and positive 2, If we multiply those together, we get negative 12, and when we add them together, we get negative 4. Rewrite your middle term so that they're in terms of negative 6 and 2. Negative 6x and 2x. So we're just splitting up the negative 4. This value here, when you add it, is the same value here. Group the first two and the last two and take out the greatest common factor. And then we have the greatest common factor of x minus 2. And then we have left 3x plus 2, and we are finished. So as you can see, we could not just place the negative 6 and 2 in our set of parentheses. There was more to it. And then when you check your answer, the first terms, when you multiply them, you should get your first term. Your last term, when you multiply them, your last terms, when you multiply them, you should get your last term. To get your middle term, you're going to take the outers, and the inners. So x times 2 is 2x. Negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. So there is where our negative 6 and our 2x come from. So the outers and inners, when you add them together, should give you your middle term. At times, we may have to factor out a greatest common factor first before we factor. So if you see anything that looks weird or there's a lot to it, see if you can factor out a greatest common factor. So between our numbers, 2, or actually negative 2, since my leading term is negative, I like to work with this when it is positive. So negative 2y will be our greatest common factor. Divide out the negative 2y. Oh, that's going to be a negative. Okay, so now we need factors of 36, negative 36 that add to negative 5. So if we go negative 9 and 4, we go negative 9 and 4, if you multiply those together, we get negative 36. Add them together, we get negative 5. Now this guy out here, I don't want to lose him because he was my first factor. So I'm going to draw an arrow to where about my answer is going to be so that I don't forget him. I can ignore him for now until I'm ready to finalize my answer. Go ahead and work with what you have in the parentheses. So we are going to rewrite that middle term into our two factors. Factor by grouping. And I'm not finished because I have this negative 2y to add to the front. If I left the negative 2y off, and I said this is my answer here, well, we are stating that this was our first value that we were given. Without the negative 2y, we can't get back to our original problem. So you have to make sure to include anything that you factored out at the very beginning. This concludes this video.